If you ran an internet search for Fosi Audio Q6 before April 2025, you would have discovered that Fosi Audio already has a product called Q6, which looks like a generic headphone DAC amp combo with an extra Bluetooth input. Confusingly, they're releasing another product also called the Q6 that is quite a different product. In the new updated version, the chassis design is a match for the V3, the GR40 and P3. So we can assume it's designed to pair with Fosi Audio's flagship tier products. Looking at you, V3. So the Q6 loses the headphone out, the digital display, digital multifunction knob and Bluetooth. In lieu of those, it gains a very welcome sub-out and attains functional purity. Simply put, it will only take whatever digital input you give it and then convert it to analog, playing it back at a single standard output level. There is no volume control, no analog or digital filters, no tone controls, only the input and output. On the front, there is a power switch and input selector. On the rear, we can find the USB-C 5V power and data input, optical and coaxial inputs, followed by right and left RCA outs, and finally an RCA sub out. The new Q6 also receives an upgrade with a higher-end AKM AK4493S DAC chip, XU316X MOS chip, and OPA 1612 op-amp. The Q6 also supports the rolling of its single op-amp, so that is something I may look into in the future. I have been using the Q6 exclusively as a USB DAC with my PC, using the Fosi Audio SK01 and Stax SRM-T1 to listen to headphones, and for my loudspeakers I have been using the Fosi Audio Z3, for which a review will be prepared in the following weeks. Inside the Q6 DAC is a relay switch. Unlike any other audio device I have ever used, this switch audibly turns on and off. Depending whether the Q6 is able to receive an audio signal. After a few weeks with the Q6, I still did not get used to this. From one perspective, it feels like the Q6 is alive and ready to respond with a will of its own, ready to feed a signal along the audio chain. On the other hand, with music turned off, while navigating between various web browser tabs that may or may not have multimedia capabilities, the Q6 switches this relay on and off, almost erratically. Okay, that's an exaggeration because there is something of a delay or cooldown between relay switches, but I find myself turning off the Q6 manually with the main power switch to stop the clicking noises. Thankfully, I imagine very few people will actually encounter this kind of issue. It's just one of those quirks that doesn't align with this user's habits. For many years, I have been something of a DAC denier. Every single piece of digital equipment with a DAC just kinda sounded the same. Only amplifiers seem to make a decent or quantifiable difference. Of course, I never claimed that all DACs sound the same. I haven't heard all DACs, so making a claim founded on ignorance didn't seem rational. I'm glad I kept an open mind. Making a direct comparison with the Audio GD NFB 11.28 TCXO, the Q6 feeding the Fosi Audio SK01 seemed to just synergize perfectly with my dynamic driver headphones, providing extra control and texture that was especially apparent in the bass frequencies, which sounded obviously smoother on the Audio GD. Interestingly, the opposite was true for my planar headphones, which benefited greatly from the extra power in the NFB 11.28, which of course could simply be the SK01 being underpowered for the task, but that's not what I'm analyzing here. I've compared the SK01 many times against the NFB 11.28 with various DACs, but with the Q6, this is the first time I have found a specific use case where I would take the SK01 over the NFB 11.28. Of course, this is also one of those cases where in the real world, these are tiny differences. But to us audio fools, these small nuances become big, important differences. My old Yamaha NS615B loudspeakers, which are basically the home version of the NS10s for the consumer market, have never sounded so alive. There's a good chance that they've never sounded like this since they were made, around 47 years ago. I think by now I've fed these with around a dozen amplifiers and DACs over the years. And for the first time, they just kind of have an effortless, realistic timbre and sense of space. Of course, this may also be in no small part down to the arrival of their V3 amplifier, but that's subject for a future review. To a smaller degree, I think I also noticed an improvement in my electrostatic listening experience, especially with regard to the vintage SR5, which somehow seemed to sound even less old and outdated, more agile and textured. Naturally, most of these differences are so small and difficult to quantify with both my own ears and the limited medium of language, but I have to add that I'm honestly quite relieved that the second standalone DAC I've been fortunate enough to review is for a neat little device that I can confidently give a recommendation for, since it not only made an actual impression on me, but has become a cornerstone for improving the general quality of my home listening experience going forward. This has been quite an exciting ride for me personally, as Fosi Audio was the very first brand to send over review samples to me in 2023, and they continue to entertain and surprise me with the affordability and quality of their products. That's it for now. Take it easy, and I'll see you in the next one.